Chapter 2 Honey Sweet Days. Guy woke up gasping. He felt knocked off balance. There was something there, just at the edge of his mind, but it was before he could make sense of it. It was frustrating. He had been having dreams ever since that night on the highway months ago. It had only been every once in a while at first, infrequent enough that it hadn't been able to differentiate it from the nightmares he sometimes had when he let himself get too stressed. But now it seemed they were happening every night. Dreams that left him weak-kneed and out of breath upon awakening. The memory of which hung at the edge of his mind, indecipherable, as if it were a passage written in a foreign language. All he could really make out was the aftertaste of fear that was left in the wake of them. He rolled over in bed to check the time. 5 a.m. Too late for him to want to bother trying to get back to sleep, but early enough that he was sure to feel it later in the day. He wiped a hand across his face in exasperation, but he extracted himself from the blankets and rolled out of the bed, careful not to wake his wife, who was still snoring softly in the pillow next to him. He hopped into the shower. The water helped a bit to wash away his thoughts. The air was warm and heavy around them, and moving through it felt like moving through honey. But Guy didn't mind it, not really. It was a beautiful day, and he had his family sitting around him, the four of them all eating barbecue and watermelon. In all honesty, the day out was so far had felt like coming up for air after spending too much time underwater. He felt something squeeze at his hand, and looked down to see his wife's fingers, sticky from the watermelon, that threaded through his own. She smiled at him. "We should probably get going soon," she told him. There was a spot of barbecue sauce just to the right of her lips, and he reached over to wipe it away. "Soon," he promised, "but not yet." It was nice to be back in the air-conditioned car, even though he had been reluctant to leave the park. Music was spilling softly from the radio. His wife was humming softly along, and he could hear his children snoring softly in the back seat. Guy reached over and placed one hand on his wife's thigh. Her hand came up to meet his. The radio crackled slightly as they rattled over a pothole, and Guy frowned slightly. The car was new enough, and they should have been well within the range of the radio signal. It cleared up soon enough, though. "Do you ever miss us?" his wife asked suddenly. Guy glanced over at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I just mean, you're gone so often." The radio let out a loud burst of static that pierced Guy's ears and made him clutch the steering wheel tightly in pain. His wife didn't seem to notice. "Sometimes I wonder." "I'm gone so much because I have to be," he reminded her, trying to ignore the pounding that had begun to form behind his eyes. The static was gone again, but the headache it seemed to have brought along didn't seem to recede at all in the sound's absence. "It's my job." She let go of his hand to run her fingers through his frosted tips. "No, I know, of course, it's just..." She shook her head. "Never mind, it's stupid, really, and I shouldn't be saying anything with the kids in the car." It was hard to focus around the pain, and his wife's hand, which had dropped from his hair to play with the lapels of his shirt, weren't making it any better. And he got the sense that this was the type of conversation he should really be focusing on. He opened his mouth to say something, to reassure her, to tell her of course he loved her, something he didn't know, but he never got the chance. He saw some sort of vehicle, twice as large as their van, barrel through the intersection in front of them. He felt himself be jerked forward as they collided. Felt the airbag explode into his face, and all he knew was darkness. Something was dripping next to him. Had one of the kids forgotten to turn off the sink again? He couldn't move his head to look. In fact, his entire body was frozen. "Awful," he heard someone say. There were footsteps by his ear, the crunch of glass. "No way we could." The voice seemed to fade out again. He couldn't hear it. His ears were already too full of ringing that seemed to have taken up residence there. His mouth tasted like iron and gasoline. A hand appeared and came to rest along his throat, insistent, searching, checking for a pulse, a voice at the back of his mind supplied. And maybe it was the rain that said that. It began to sound less like ringing and more like voices calling out to him, calling for him. There was shouting, not from the voices but from next to him. He couldn't make out the words. The water was still dripping. Someone turned off the sink, he tried to say, but he couldn't get his mouth to cooperate. He felt himself slipping back into the darkness, and he let it take him.